Live updates from Elon Musk and Sam Altman's court battle over the future of. The consensus read is already outdated. What matters now is the second-order effect most commentary still ignores. We will map trigger, incentive shift, and downstream impact before the close. This isn't a small dispute between former colleagues, it's a fight over the future of artificial intelligence itself, and it's happening in real time. Here's what triggered this. Musk co-founded OpenAI in 2015 as a non-profit research lab with one stated mission: to build safe artificial general intelligence and ensure it benefits humanity. The deal was simple. No massive profits. Just alignment between incentives and public good. Then OpenAI created a for-profit subsidiary. Altman became CEO. Microsoft poured billions in. And suddenly, the original mission became harder to see. Musk's argument is direct: OpenAI broke its founding charter. The organization transformed from a nonprofit dedicated to AI safety into a profit-maximizing machine serving Microsoft's interests. That matters because it changes everything about how decisions get made, from safety testing to model deployment to whose voice gets heard in the boardroom. But here's what makes this fight instructive beyond the boardroom drama. This lawsuit exposes a fundamental tension that's been building inside the entire AI industry. Every major AI lab faces the same question: how do you balance safety research with commercial speed? How do you keep your founding mission alive when venture capital and corporate partnerships demand growth metrics? OpenAI became famous for ignoring that tension. Musk is now asking the courts to force them to confront it. The stakes are concrete. If Musk wins, OpenAI could be forced to restructure, potentially splitting the for-profit and non-profit entities, rebalancing governance, or even surrendering control of some assets. If Altman prevails, it sets a precedent that transformation toward commercialization is allowed, and founders who leave can't reverse the direction of their former companies. That precedent ripples. Every AI startup founded on safety principles will know that their mission can be legally traded away for growth. What's instructive here is the timing. This lawsuit arrives right as AI models are becoming more capable and more consequential. GPT-4 is being integrated into government systems, healthcare applications, and financial infrastructure. The decisions made inside OpenAI's boardroom now affect millions of users who have no seat at the table. Musk's case argues that the public has a stake in how OpenAI operates, not because Musk owns it anymore, but because AI governance is governance, and governance should be transparent and mission-aligned. There's also a contrarian angle worth considering. Musk built Tesla and SpaceX as for-profit companies that delivered on moonshot missions. He didn't need a non-profit structure to prioritize long-term thinking. So why is he fighting OpenAI's commercialization now? One reading: he's protecting his original vision. Another reading: he's trying to regain influence over an organization that grew more powerful than he did. The court will have to parse that motive, but the structural question remains true either way. What changes next matters for three groups. First, investors watching AI startups will see that mission drift can be litigated. Second, researchers at competing labs, at Anthropic, at Google DeepMind, at other shops, will watch how courts treat governance questions in AI companies. And third, regulators are watching. If courts start enforcing mission alignment, that suggests AI governance can move beyond voluntary commitments and into legal obligation. The most probable outcome over the next 60 days is discovery, where both sides reveal internal communications, board minutes, and strategic decisions. Those documents will be instructive. They'll show exactly when and how OpenAI's leadership decided to prioritize growth over caution. Media coverage will intensify. Talent at OpenAI and Anthropic will face questions about mission drift in their own organizations. And the AI industry will have to reckon with the fact that you can't build a company on safety rhetoric and then optimize purely for scale without someone noticing. This is worth monitoring because it's the first major legal test of whether AI governance can be enforced in courts, not just in op-eds. Watch for three signals. How aggressively does OpenAI's legal team contest the validity of Musk's standing? What do the discovery documents reveal about board decisions between 2018 and 2023? And how do other AI founders respond? Do they double down on mission statements, or do they accept that commercialization is inevitable? The answer shapes not just OpenAI's future, but the incentive structure for every AI company that follows. For builders and investors, the immediate signal is this: governance matters now. It's not just corporate navel-gazing. It's a legally contested question with real consequences. Follow the case, read the filings, and ask yourself whether the AI companies you work with or invest in can articulate a mission that survives contact with scale. That clarity, it turns out, might matter more than the models themselves. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next.